Clinton, one of the things that's most interesting to me about the book is the historical aspect of it, that you've covered over about 5 decades of live music in Australia, the history of the issues about venues and performance. There always seems to have been issues. Why do you think it's actually important to publish this book now, and what are the issues that are really important now? Because the issues have changed over time.
Yeah, look, if it wasn't one thing, it's another. It's been going like that since the end of the 70s, at which time the authorities or the moneyed interests, or there's crime and corruption at that time too, of course, realised what was going on. Something's happening here. There's a lot of people, a lot of money. And it's been, yeah, if not one thing, another since that time. Right now, it's big time in the news now. I think it's kind of ironic that Liberals love live music and Labor loves live music. We know that the Liberals and the Labor Party are unfortunately kind of fusing into something indistinguishable. But that's a bit, and this is all about where it's come down to these questions of amenity and the idea that people and developers can move into an area which is a pre-existing area where there's music venues, move in next door to a music pub and then complain that it's noisy and win. And that's what we hope. I hope the book was really dedicated to, that this is the most burning issue now. The book starts out in the Tote Hotel fiasco down in Melbourne in 2010, and that was such a big thing because it was actually so wrong, and it got thrown out because it was so wrong. And even all the folks down in Melbourne that worked hard on that campaign realised, okay, we beat that furphy, complete and utter furphy, but now this amenity thing, which has been just rising and rising since the 1980s, is more important than ever.
So the Tote episode really was a continuation of the history of the issues with respect to people outside the industry finding it threatening. Yeah,
look, I think so. I mean, I think a lot of the perceptions of the live music scene were, sort of still are, there's some kind of bacchanalian orgy full of juvenile delinquents, and if it's a good gig, yes, it is, we hope, but it's kind of not, I mean, yeah, when the Tote, Liquor Licensing Victoria squeezed the Tote out of existence on the basis that it was a high risk for violence pub, and this is it, at that time, the reason it became such a big thing was because, well, no, it's not, and, violence for us have been, 3,000 gigs I concluded that I've been to, I really saw very little. That was just such a non-issue that's why it had to get stood on, And so, in a way, the Tote was a bit of an aberration that happened in Victoria at that time. But as I say, the Victorian people working really hard on it realised they beat that furphy, and then realised, well, actually the bigger issue now is this amenity thing.
Yeah. I mean, the one of the things also that struck me, and possibly an extension of this, is that there's a lot of people making decisions about live music who are not participants in the industry and don't know anything about it. And in the book we refer kind of sneeringly in some respects to what we might regard as an arts establishment, and this is people who are in the high arts, if you like, people who work in theatre, people who work in opera. It seems as though those people are still reluctant to get on board and support what is established in the book as the largest, in many ways, section of the entire performing arts industry in Australia. Those people would say, oh, well, of course you have to support opera and theatre because it enriches humanity, it informs people. And if you're outside the live music industry, those people would look at Midnight Oil, Nick Cave, the presets, whatever, and say, well, how do they enrich humanity? How are they contributing in the same way as opera theatre? What do you say to people like that?
Oh, look, I've been putting up with that for 40 years, and it's caused me, no small amount of anguish in some ways, because I sort of had, I fell into this game because I loved it, and I can leap ahead in one way and say I love painting. I paint myself. I love fiction, and I listen to all kinds of music, actually. I confess, not a lot of opera, but I listen to modern jazz, and the effect that music has on me is kind of, for the best stuff. It's no different for the best stuff or the best art that I look at to the best contemporary music that I listen to. It just feels like that you've been the barbarians at the gate for that whole time and you've never cracked through. And I think even most people who are not directly involved have a few CDs or whatever, and it's funny, through the book we sort of quote various premiers of states. So, yes, I was a pub rocker too. I used to go and see moving pictures or Men at Work or whatever, and everybody has a bit of it in their dark past. But, to me, it's an absolutely vital cultural thing that I've sort of revelled in for 40 years. I know it's not worthless. I know it's not empty. I know that at best, and it's like anything else, okay, you can say to me, have a look at the top 20 if the top 20 still exists. I saw an interesting analysis recently which sort of had the top 20, 80% of which was, The Voice graduates or X Factor or whatever they are. And many of us who are sort of serious about the contemporary music scene despair a bit about that, but that's always been there too. The sort of bubblegum scene, and I don't want to disparage the teenage girls that make that possible, so, good on them, and they stay with it and they might get into other music. And so...
it's just the latest version of Young Talent Time.
Look, it is. Everyone loves a talent quest. Everyone loves a talent quest. There's not going to... it just sort of feels like I've been a barbarian at the gate for 40 years, and that's what I mean. It's sort of like, gee...
and is it you suggest in the book
that
a lot of that is to do with the alcohol? That if music as a valued art form is about emotional response, then there is nothing more immediate and more exciting than going to a good gig. Yeah. But these gigs are with alcohol.
That's right.
And that's what people don't understand, and that to some extent is what stigmatised it. Look,
I think so, and I couldn't speak with absolute authority, but I think if you were to go to tribal rituals in Africa, there's a bit of chemical enhancement going on there.
Yes,
and there's a bit of a point in the book where I liken it to, I do believe that a lot of popular culture stuff, not in the film side of things, but in the music, it all comes from black music.
Yeah.
I was one of those kids who listened to the Rolling Stones in the 70s and checked the writing credits and went, who's Howlin' Wolf? Who's Muddy Waters? Who's John Lee Hooker? That's the classic thing. It's all black music. And this whole... so I loved the idea of this being a bacchanalian ritual.
Yeah.
And you get lost into that. And that was the thing. That's why the violence... I won't dwell on the violence thing because it's such a furphy. But you couldn't, because you'd go to a great gig... and it's in that realm. And we've had a few drinks, and we used to have a few fags, and you might meet an interesting other or whatever. So that's where it becomes this. It's a real communal thing too.
Yeah.
The pub down the road here, where you go and see gigs. I'll see neighbours. I'll meet new people. I don't go to church groups. So I can't get my boy to play football. So it's a little bit of a link into the community that I have around here.
You are right, actually, because it's very easy for us to take seriously ethnographic musical recordings.
It's
and
funny,
those exactly. But so what is so wrong about white boy rock and roll?
Look, that's another argument I've maintained for a long time. Why is it okay we ship in for the Sydney Festival, the Mullatinee Queens or whoever from Africa? It's great because I've gotten to see some fantastic African music, and so I don't complain about that. But I'm sort of going, that's kind of the same thing in Africa for what these boys down the corner, or girls, increasingly, that should be, I should hasten to add that one too. The thing hasn't been the sexist thing it's perceived as, since the post-punk era. The punk era put women on the stage. Ask Lindy Morrison if you don't believe me.
Yeah.
And so... it's occupying perhaps a similar function to what those people that we get shipped in. So that argument against the exoticization that us white folks want to make, and it's okay to put the Mullatinee Queens down at the Opera House, but you're not going to see the twerps there.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that's bullshit.
Yeah, well, I'm inclined to agree with you. So what is good and what is working at the moment that we need to protect and we need to look after? You in the book you draw attention to around where we are now, around the inner west of Sydney,
Yeah.
that there are a number of good venues that are
Yeah.
actually thriving at the moment. You talk extensively about Brisbane and its post-Bjelke Peterson era,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
them having done a lot of good things. So what are the crucial things that are working that we need to hang on to at the moment?
What's actually working? Well, one thing that's working is that the music's not stopping, right? And they're, you know, it's a bit like I find it teaching at university. Boy, they just keep coming every year.
Yeah.
There's more of them.
Yeah.
And the music's not stopping. A lot of people can sort of say, oh, you know, the music's dead and all that, and that might just be cynical. But so the music is and it's finding ways to do it. Now, in this very neighbourhood that we're sitting in now, Marrickville, Mville 2204, I think it is. It's worthy of a TV bloody sitcom, you know. There's been venues rise up. Now, Mville property values are going through the roof, and you can see that down on Marrickville Road, and now we're getting coffee shops, you know,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And it wasn't there 5 years ago. And so, you know, that's what's working. There's music, and people are finding ways to put the music out there, and they're still finding an audience for it. People want to go. Even old farts like me, you know,
Yeah.
we can still go, especially if it's local like that. So what the issue becomes about is that we really don't want, in 5 years' time, to happen what's happened elsewhere around Sydney as that frontier moves from Darlinghurst, and Darlinghurst got where I lived for 15 years around the 80s, because everything was there. You know, there isn't. There's a couple of music venues. It's there's not in King's Cross where there's violence happening. There isn't live music anymore like there used to be. The timeliness, which we couldn't have. It's kind of good and bad, isn't it? Because there's bad things happening. It's good for us to promote this argument we're trying to promote. The Sandringham Hotel closes. Well, Newtown was a spot for a while, and that changed, and it kind of moved to the next suburb, which is Marrickville. You know. And it got squeezed out of Newtown for that amenity gentrification reasons, and we hope in a couple of years' time it's not squeezed out of Marrickville.